My name's James Towers, and I'm going to be your host for this INCOSE UK webinar, which is part of the Meet the Council series. And today I'm pleased to introduce to you the group known as the 3Ps, the three presidents. And we have on the call today Malcolm Thomas, the current president of INCOSE UK. Ian Gibson, the immediate past president of INCOSE UK, and Andrew Pemberton, the president-elect of INCOSE UK. And the purpose of today is really to allow you to get to know what their roles are all about, what motivates them as volunteers at INCOSE UK, and also to give you some idea of why we think it's a good idea that people should volunteer at INCOSE UK and why INCOSE UK needs volunteers in order to operate. So I'd like to start today by asking the current president, Malcolm, really what his role as president is. Malcolm.
Right, thanks, James. Welcome, everybody. I guess primarily it is to be the figurehead of INCOSE UK, as we are a PEI, a professional engineering institution in the UK, as well as being the UK chapter of INCOSE. And that entails representing the institute, I'll call it that because that's what we are, at various events and things like that, with the Royal Academy of Engineering, the Engineering Council, Engineering UK, and going to various sorts of meetings, but also sort of setting direction for INCOSE UK. You can look at it as being, well, the big PEIs have CEOs. So we sort of act as a bit of a CEO. We are directors of an organisation, a company that is INCOSE UK, which is registered at Companies House. And so we have those sorts of accountabilities, if you like. And so we chair all the meetings, we go to various events, represent the institute. But it's a very rewarding position to have. So that's sort of it in a nutshell, I guess. And then you are supported by the other 2Ps who have various roles to fulfill, and the rest of the council, which is around about 12 strong. So you're not on your own. You're there to sort of lead, guide, be the figurehead. And I guess if we did have to make an ultimate decision, then it would be down to the president to do that.
Excellent, thank you. Perhaps not everybody is aware, but of course, when your term as president is over, you don't disappear, you do remain on the council for a period. And in fact, Ian, if you could tell us what the roles and responsibility of the immediate past president are, that would be quite nice, please.
Yeah, so part of it is actually getting out of the way a bit, give a bit of space, allow the next person in just to kind of take stock of what they want to do, and sort of and then support them in kind of what you think might be achievable in their time frame. There's equally a lot of dealing with your own loose ends and tidying up your own mess. So that which you created, you do have to play a hand in making sure it's put to bed properly, sorted out. And I've certainly left plenty of mess has needed to, well, say mess. I've left a lot of loose ends that needed just to be kind of finished off and sorted out. And part of what I've been doing is I basically sort of said, well, I will make sure that the IFC stuff comes to the end. So I will stay on until that's all fulfilled. So I've taken on various of my own initiatives that I started and sort of actually taken them to extend off Malcolm so he can focus on his stuff and make sure that things I kind of know about and understand that I've taken on and sort of seen through and am seeing through at the moment. So that won't be the case for all former presidents, but in my own case, having started this off, I was keen to make sure I stayed in position to get it finished, which hopefully allowed Malcolm to then refocus on everything else he has to do, because it's not just about name changes. There's a lot more going on than first meets the eye. So that's the sort of main bit. Added to which, I guess, as time goes by, you're kind of there more as an advisor and less as a doer. So it should be the case that you're actually just giving people the help they need to sort of work it out for themselves. And likewise, working with the president-elect to sort of almost taught them onto the job in terms of, well, here's how it tends to work, and this is the sort of stuff that in the past has gone well or gone badly. So you're a little bit of a kind of historical figure as well, and that you sort of know about what's happened when you've been around. You can give that bit of kind of last time we did that, here's how it worked, so perhaps do it this way instead might be better. But you're there to help, you're there to assist, and certainly I think it's good practice that you see through stuff that you've started to make sure that you're not leaving people with lots of stuff that's all your ideas to finish off when they have their better ideas quite often to come afterwards.
And are there any formal responsibilities for the immediate past president, or is it simply in an advisory role?
It has various responsibilities nowadays. So you've got to lead the nominations appointments committee. So one new thing we've brought in for this year is rather than always being searching for people to try and persuade them to stand when the opportunity comes along, we'd much rather start to think a bit more ahead about who do you know that could be good for certain positions and start to essentially encourage people to become volunteers, because it is potentially a daunting thing. You don't want to know what you're stepping into. The nominations and appointments committee is there to try and effectively soften the edge and give you someone you can talk to who can explain to you what the various roles involve, give you that sense of whether you think it's right for you, and then effectively what we're trying to do is just encourage more people to stand for various things. It's quite nice this year, actually. We're able to, because one thing I've been annoyed about in the past is when we've had elections, one person wins, they do the role, and the other people just disappear off to wherever they go. We're trying to say, well, actually, if you're a perfectly good volunteer who would be really good for the role, but you just didn't win, well, would you fancy doing something else? So we're trying to kind of just create that sense of it's not just about a kind of a binary win, lose, go away, stay, but actually we want to grow the pool of volunteers. So that's very much a sort of a thing which is coming new for the past presidents, but will become, I think, more of a kind of bigger role as they go forward. Is effectively nurturing some sort of set of volunteers to go forwards. It's not about kind of picking and choosing and selecting a team ourselves. It's about just enabling ourselves to be there and encourage people, whoever comes along.
Excellent, thank you. And then, of course, at the other end of the journey, we have Andrew, the president-elect. Would you like to describe for us the role of president-elect, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, James. Morning, everyone. So it is the start of a 6-year commitment. And obviously, as Malcolm and Ian have said, there is a whole raft of things that going from a member to actually being part of that council, part of the board of directors, there is a lot of things that you don't see as a member. And so having these 2 years as president-elect to actually learn the role of president, rather than being fully dumped into it straight from the start with full responsibility, you've got this nice transition from member through this president-elect role until your time comes up as mine is in November, to take on the mantle of president. And it gives you that time to learn about the operations and what both the council, the various volunteer groups across our organisation, and also the secretariat that support us, what those operations are and how they operate, how the company works effectively, so that you can take those decisions when you do become president. You also, you get a lot of support from the president and past president in terms of building you up to and understanding what that role needs to be. You also get some of the fun bits of the roles of 3Ps, which are you get to work with the Early Careers Forum. You're the main point of contact for the Early Careers Forum. You are although we do now obviously have an Early Careers Chair represented on the council. You get to work with the UCAB, our UK Advisory Board, which is the corporate, industry, academia and government set of companies and establishments who provide direction and understanding for us to help us make decisions so that we are aligning with the way that our industry partners want to head. And you're the main representative from council to that body and set the direction and understand, what does the council want from the UK Advisory Board? What does the UK Advisory Board want from the council? And manage that relationship, which currently sits at 32 or 33 companies from across and organisations from across UK PLC. And the really big fun piece is getting to organise the annual conference, which has gone from strength to strength over the last few years, and getting to go and actually visit some of the locations, the potential locations, do the site tours, understand whether it's even possible to run an event at those locations, looking at all of the things that go into and coordinating, along with the technical director, coordinating the technical program, and making decisions on what the event is going to be, the theme, and then the sort of the various different aspects of the event. So that's a really good and interesting piece to do. Along with that, obviously supporting the current president in some of the roles to wider INCOSE, to the European, Middle East and Africa sector. So coordinating across that sort of European piece and up to the INCOSE board, where the current president needs support. So that's everything.
Excellent. And so just staying with you for a moment, Andrew, can you remember what it was that motivated you to stand for the position, and why you wanted to get involved at this level?
Yeah, sure. So shortly before, in the summer of 2022, my boss at Thales UK asked me that fateful question of, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And I said, oh, I'm not actually really that sure. I'm going to do some thinking on that. And I had some conversations with various people in different positions across the company and outside of the company. And I started to form the idea that I wanted to go into some sort of leadership role, engineering leadership across either Thales or somewhere, that's and at the same time, the nominations call went out for the INCOSE UK president position. And I'd already had a few conversations with various past presidents at the time about the role. And I was talking to some of the people who were people I considered to be potential candidates, and trying to encourage some people to volunteer. And they said, well, why don't you do it? And alongside that piece of wanting to enter into leadership, and actually one of the things this role gives you is almost a safe space. It gives you your own company to run for 6 years, because you are a formal director of a company with fiscal responsibility for that company. You've got all of the operational management that goes with that position, and no leadership training course from a company is going to give you that opportunity. And so I saw it as an opportunity to get more involved in a wider network as well, not just within my network within the company, but actually across the UK and wider across the world, and really broaden my my horizons as to what was going on in systems engineering more broadly than my specific little bit of Thales.
Excellent, thank you for that. And I guess really I'd like to explore the same idea with you, Malcolm, but I guess you were coming from a slightly different position in that you were already recognised as a senior leader within your organisation. So I guess your motivations were slightly different there.
Yes. I think my motivation was more about giving back. Having been a member of INCOSE UK for some years, and I'd also been our WSP point of contact on the UCAB for many years. So I'd sort of seen occasionally at the joint meetings how council worked, the good and the bad, if you like. And I was sort of keen at that, 4 years ago now, nearly. Well, I guess it is 4 years ago since I've sort of put in my nomination form, nearly. I'd like to get more involved and give something back. I'm at the, if you like, the twilight end of my career. So when I probably step down as immediate past president, I might fade away. But yeah, it was more about what can I do as a volunteer to help, move the institute that I'm a member of further forward. So that was the prime motivation. It wasn't the first role I thought of doing, and I was about to submit a nomination for a different role when I was suddenly sent one from a colleague for that role to not to support. And I felt, can't really stand against them. So I had a chat with a few people and thought I got a bit of encouragement and said, right, go for this one. And I don't regret any minute of it. It was really, really good. A bit daunting to start with, but as everyone said, there's plenty of support, and it's been really good. So yeah, it's about giving back for me. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Excellent. And then I guess, Ian, you've had quite a long history of volunteering with INCOSE, both INCOSE UK and I believe you've done things for INCOSE Central as well. So what was your motivation for taking the big job, as we'll call it?
Well, slightly different because I was already on the council anyway, so I was aware of and things that are in trade going on. I think for me, I knew that after lots of chats with INCOSE, there was still heavy lifting to do, a lot of things that had to be sorted. In particular, our roles were in serious sorting, and so it was like to kind of there to see that through, because I'd had the sense that a new person in wouldn't get the urgency and perhaps would kind of founder a bit at the point of just making a PI. So I was quite keen to see that through. I guess I did have this. I did literally map out on a whiteboard with my line manager, kind of what where. And one thought was actually quite nice to be a president and do it as part of my career, rather than do it at the end. So rather than the thought of finish things off, it could potentially be a springboard to doing other stuff afterwards. So then it becomes, as you said, you've had 6 years kind of training yourself up, running a company, and do other things you normally do. If you quite take that and actually interact somewhere else, or at least have that as an option. So it's giving me a different outlook on the world, and I can now take that somewhere and do something. It's a different set of motivations, I suspect. I think it's good because it's both, and also the name change stuff that I was working to some point, and it's sort of casual, and also the initial first president. It works down to having a good name. When I had a good name to change to. Once we became an Institute for X, then it was quite easy. So I think for me it was that sense of continuity, is just getting things done, and also what I want to do is I can hand over in a good shape to the next set of people.
We're actually having a few bandwidth problems with your audio at the moment, so apologies to anybody listening if you're dropping out there. Staying with you for a moment then, Ian, bandwidth allowing, what do you think has been the biggest change in your journey with INCOSE? Because obviously in the P terms, you've been serving the longest. What's been the biggest change, really?
So we've become an awful lot more professional in how we do things. We've gone from being that kind of engineering club, if you like, of people that get to talk about things they're interested in, through to being a properly licensed, regulated body that is now plugged the engineering ecosystem of the UK. So we're kind of a club of food-minded people, and we're now properly regulated. And so that's a big effort, is kind of making that step and changing that approach to how we do things. But without losing that ethos of still here to be the friendly place to come and talk about stuff, it's just we have to do it within a much more structured and formal way that kind of fits in with wider ecosystem. So I think that's been a really big thing. Obviously, numbers have changed. We have 400 members. We started at 1,000. We're now 1,500 rising. And of course, more people, there's more stuff you can do. I think generally there's been a very welcome resurgence in systems thinking as well. So in the outside world, that you hear a lot more about systems thinking, and we're actually well poised as we are now, kind of if changing ourselves, being an old go-to place for that, to engage across engineering with that systems kind of edge to things. So once again, it's been a very useful thing to see as we go on. So yeah, I think those are probably the sort of big things.
Excellent, thank you. And a slightly different question for you, Malcolm. How has your time as president differed from how you imagined it would be as president-elect, if it has indeed differed?
That's an interesting question, because I think, sitting as president-elect and working with Ian and the rest of the council on the name change thing, we all thought, I think, when we set out on that journey, that it was going to be a heck of a lot quicker than it has been. And I suppose I thought I would be, if you're not like, the second president of IFSI, and we would be doing things like instigating a fellow member category and inaugurating our first fellows and things like that. But I think that might now fall to Andrew to do that. So basically, it's been more consolidation and setting ourselves up in the background while Ian and the task force move forward with actually inaugurating IFSI, if you like, and moving all our members and license to get us set up as a business, really, to do it. So we've been looking a lot on strategy, getting policies and procedures that were perhaps missing in place. As Ian has just said, we've transitioned from being a society, a club, to a professional engineering institution. We are more strictly governed than we used to be. And I think as part of the name change process, we did discover some gaps in what we had in place. And so we've been filling those. And that's primarily I think the sort of change that I've seen. But then I guess it's a learning process, because, as Andrew said, you are running a business, and from the outside it might look that's fairly simple, but then you see all the nuances and the sort of little pitfalls that you have to try and avoid, and the other entities that you have to deal with, that can cause things to move a little slower than you were expecting or particularly want to. So I think that's the difference. But it's not been frustrating. It's just been a different challenge. And you sort of think, right, it gives us an opportunity to do other things that perhaps we might not have done.
Great, thank you. Andrew, and as Malcolm says there, perhaps fortunately, many of the big ideas have not yet been put into place, which gives you the opportunity to realise those things. But I just wondered, from your perspective, whether or not you feel any pressure in order to do something big as president, because it's a restricted opportunity. Not everybody gets the chance to be president. Is there a kind of a self-expectation that you must achieve something notable?
When I first joined the president team, we sat and went through the various legacies of our predecessors, and you can go back through the people who have made a significant step change, and note something that every single president has brought to the society. I think there is that expectation that there's going to be something you are noted for. I think one of the big things that is key for me, and I have to keep reminding myself, is that yes, you have to leave some legacy, some improvement, but actually you need to do that within the context of what INCOSE UK is. It is a volunteer organisation. It is a volunteer-led organisation. We rely heavily on the volunteers, and that means you're relying heavily on volunteer time. And realistically, you can't set your expectations too high. As Malcolm said, we were hoping that I would have joined the IFSI council long before it would have been the IFSI council long before my time. But things do take time, and I think that's one of the biggest things. Is yes, have something in mind, have some ideas or a set of things you would like to look towards, but make sure that you manage your expectations within that.
Yeah, Yeah, great point. And so kind of on that topic, Malcolm, one of the things I think that may sometimes put people off from putting themselves forward for these positions is that you are committing yourself to 6 years, which in some sense seems like a very long commitment. But I suspect when you're actually president for 2 years, that's actually a very short amount of time to really achieve anything. And I wonder if you could just talk to that contradiction.
Yeah, each of the roles, as we've talked about, are 2 years, and they are distinct roles in what you do. So yes, it's a 6-year commitment, but 2 years is quite a short time in each of them, and particularly in the presidential role, to actually get something done and see it through in the 2 years. I think you have to sort of be aware, as Andrew's just said, that you might get stymied. So it is, just setting your expectations, but it's very fulfilling, and it's a challenge that you need to rise to, but don't set your expectations too high in what you can achieve, because it is a short time. It goes really quickly. Doesn't seem like 3 and a bit years since I sort of started as president-elect, and it's not long until November, and that'll be upon us in no time whatsoever, and I'll be stepping across to be immediate past president. But it's just setting expectations and thinking it's not really that long. It might seem it, but it goes in a flash, and it's great fun, and that's all I can really say about it. Really, it is immensely fulfilling.
Yeah, great. And then, so Ian, I'm pretty sure that we won't see you disappear when your term comes to an end. But I just wondered, have you got any thoughts on how we can, as an organisation, utilise the experience of all the past presidents? Because there's a number of past presidents out there, and they've got lots of experience. Is there anything you think we could do differently to perhaps make the most of that experience?
Well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you don't necessarily people who were the person there at the time giving you their opinion on what you should do now, because sometimes it isn't always going to be the most helpful opinion in the room, and some of them will disagree with each other quite happily. There is one of the thoughts we do have is that if we get our fellow scheme going, there's a number of people who would naturally become fellows of the organisation who would also be in that past president category, and actually having a fellows committee that was slightly wider than just past presidents would be quite useful, because then we could effectively draw on that to get some wisdom from a slightly wider crowd. So I know we have. I've certainly had past presidents that I get on well with, that I've talked things over with, and I guess every president probably has a different set of people that they feel most happy to go and sort of phone up and have a chat with and see what they think. So I certainly did that at various points in my own sort of time in office, because it just made sense. But whether you'd want to go back through every single past president we ever had and get them all to sort of get on the same call together and discuss stuff, I think it would be mayhem probably in some cases. Yeah. So yes, there is something. We all do it a bit unofficially, because that's kind of how the world works. As an official thing, I think I'd probably rather go down that kind of fellows committee route, so we have a slightly wider sort of gene pool to pull on, and they're probably more likely to keep themselves in order that way.
Yeah. And then, so Andrew, obviously we know each other professionally and socially, and so this is really a question for you to address to everybody else. But what do you think will make you a different president to presidents who have gone before? I mean, each president is unique and has their unique outlook, but what do you think you'd like to bring to the role that's different from perhaps previous presidents?
I think I want to see some amount of change in how inclusive and how broad a church we are. And I think we can lead industry in starting to make that change. Obviously, engineering has its particular biases, so we've got a pool to draw on. but we can make a difference there because we're cross industry and we can actually start to make be the change you want to see as a establishment. I think there's also opportunity to be more of an authority, more engaged with some of our peers, where, as Ian said, before we've been a learning society, a talking shop, a place to get a network of people, of like-minded people. But actually, we've now got that network. We need to build on that and really utilize that strength that we have in our numbers to, make sure that when someone is talking about systems, our name's on it, and actually get ourselves at that table more than we already are, because there's a lot of systems thinking starting to happen across everywhere. But I think INCOSE should be, and INCOSE UK should be leading that charge.
And Malcolm, Ian's already said that one of the roles of the immediate past president is to head up the nominations and appointments committee, and obviously that will be a role that you'll move into when you become immediate past president. So I just wonder if you've got any thoughts on really that idea and how we can improve. I guess we'd all agree we want to improve the pipeline of potential people to fill council roles.
Yes, and I think there's still that. It's only in its infancy. We only sort of launched it this year, and I think there's more to be done. That's just a matter of timing of it. Is reaching out into our membership. I think these, meet the council are a good way of doing it. But I think with the members of that committee, we need to be talking to people we know, and it's not just all the people we know, it's those people and their networks within our membership, and building up that sort of framework and network within the membership and understanding where the next set of volunteers are likely to come from. And it's also looking at our early careers people as well, because even though they have their committee and they shadow a lot of what we do on council, when they step down from there, they're probably not quite in the position to become council members, but they've had that taster for it, so they know what trying to be leaders of a group within systems engineering is like, and it's preparing them for their journey so that they might become potential council members later. So there's a bit of a gap, if you like, but it's not losing them, because they've proven to be good volunteers already. So it's nurturing them through their careers as well as reaching in through our UCAB members as well to find, the potential volunteers and the next council members. So there are a few things I'm, starting to think about how we can do that. But it'll be a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have. And I think, yes, if we can widen that network and build that pipeline, that's the goal for the 2 years come November, is to have that pipeline. And we've seen some benefit of just having that committee already. So that's where I hope to get to. It probably won't be as easy as just saying it.
Of course.
But there we are. And I think, it is just that encouragement of people, because there are plenty of perfectly able people out there. And as Andrew said, it is getting to our entire membership and not just the same olds coming forward, and looking to, be more inclusive, more diverse, and representing our membership, which is that when you go and look, it is very inclusive. It's a diverse set of members from all kinds of industries and backgrounds and things like that. So we need to have them represented on council.
Yeah. So a question that perhaps leads on from that, Ian, is that the current 3Ps are all working for UCAB organisations, large organisations who are very supportive of their involvement in INCOSE. They see it as a benefit not just to the individuals but to the organisations. Is there anything we can do, anything we should be doing to make it easier for people who don't necessarily work for UCAB organisations or don't necessarily work for large organisations to get involved in these positions?
It's a really tricky one, that, isn't it? Because you're right, it almost creates a bit of a barrier to entry because you have to have someone behind you who's backing you.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have some directors who are people like John Holt, who basically work for smaller companies that have to back themselves. And I guess that's a business decision that they have to make as being whether they wish to or not. In a sense, it all comes down to money, as always. So if we had extra funding available, and we are, of course, in current negotiations with INCOSE about keeping all the money that we get from our members, which would improve things. If we had that bit of additional funding, we could look at making it available in some fashion to sort of ease the journey. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to get away from. As a president, you're expected to be at the council meetings. You're expected to be representing us in some way at things in London or elsewhere as part of being the PI CEO role. So it's kind of unfortunate, but there's a certain amount of you need to be able to get there somehow. And it just tends to mean that it's people working for bigger companies that tend to be able to find that backing. So it would be nice if we could do that. And I know that, other bigger institutes do obviously pay people to do things a bit more. So, and our new articles would let us do it as well. That's one thing we did put in there, is to make sure that the opportunity is there. It's not precluded anymore. It's just a matter of actually whether we could ever get ourselves on that financial footing where we do that. Now, we do clearly subsidise some of the things, so you don't have to pay to attend ASEC if you're on the council. It's covered for you because we expect you to be there. It's only fair we actually pay for your registration fees, but clearly the travel and everything else you still pay for yourself. So there's a way to go. It is sadly all about money in the end, and how we kind of create that sort of change in the dynamic within COSI, and also potentially grow the revenue streams to make it more viable. I mean, ideally would be 4 times the size with a paid CEO. That'd be lovely. I don't think that's happening in Andrew's time necessarily, but one day there'll be a president who gets to announce that. And that's the thing. It's that business side coming through. Effectively, as a business, you've got to run a certain way. It would be nice to have more people from smaller companies do more roles, but it's just finding a way through that.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that. And so Andrew, on that subject, how have you found the commitment, and has it measured up to what you anticipated it to be, or is it more or less, or about the same?
I had some conversations with Ian and watched the previous 3Ps, this equivalent video 2 years ago. And I went to my company and asked them to give me originally a day a week, and they said, no, that's too much. They agreed to cover 2 days a month of my time, on company time towards this role. I think it probably takes more like 6 days a month on average, but it peaks and troughs across the year. So, and dependent on roles. So I can speak to the president-elect role. There's certainly an awful lot to do in the lead up to ASEC. As that starts to ramp up, obviously there's a commitment there. And then there's the various council meetings and the UCAB meetings across the year, which, yes, at the end in November, I will hand over the council representative to the UCAB for the next president-elect. So I lose those meetings, but I will gain some that Malcolm is currently attending. I've also taken on additional volunteer roles with INCOSE UK, looking at the professional development and becoming a professional development advisor and interviewer. And that is an assessor, so that is taking additional time as well. I think realistically, I would say it did take a bit more time than I had expected. There is quite a few especially with a lot of the transitions at the moment and change to FC. There is quite an additional burden on the president role, on that board, to make the decisions. And I think all three of us have seen more decisions being made almost ex committee, or having to do emergency, extraordinary meetings, because the council meetings are only once every 3 months. And with the additional membership we have now, some of those decisions can't wait 3 months to be made. So we are seeing, I think, an increased burden at the moment. And I would say, yeah, it is more like 6 days a month, probably, certainly 4 on the quiet months.
Cool, thanks. So on that subject, Malcolm, has the change in the way that a lot of us work, particularly since the pandemic, has that really helped with these roles? The fact that there's more stuff online and perhaps more collaborative working online and things like that.
I think it has, and systems like this, Zoom, have helped a great deal, and it's meant that for some of us, attending council meetings, which are, even for me, I only, most of the time I've been in the role, I've been 4 days a week in my professional life, if you like. So I've had time that I can devote to it, but a lot of things fall on your working day, and my company have been very supportive in doing it. So doing things via Zoom like this has meant that you don't have to travel as much. And initially, we were doing a lot by Zoom, of course, when we couldn't travel. But then now I think it's nice to get there and meet face to face. But it does mean for those that are strapped for time a little bit and can only dip in and out because of other work commitments, that they can take, part and participate in our meetings. And as Andrew said, yes, we've been able to hold, extraordinary council meetings and things like that to vote on stuff or reach a decision on things. And we've tended to do those online, which has meant that we can work a lot more effectively, I think, while still having our regular council meetings face to face in the main. So yeah, it's resulted in less exclusion, I guess, and from people just not being able to attend, to at least to be able to attend for their part of the meeting and as much as they can. So I'd say, yeah, it's improved things greatly and made our decision making more effective and efficient.
Cool. Excellent. Obviously, Ian, every president brings something slightly different to the role. They've got different personalities, and obviously also it's a great opportunity for individuals to develop while they're in the role. But from your perspective, what do you think are the key skills that really a president needs to have, or a president needs to develop throughout their term?
So I think I've lent quite heavily on my consultancy skills throughout all this. So being quite used to going to kind of short, sharp tasks where you have to get in there, work out which way's up, see who's where in the stakeholder sort of set of relationships, build rapport with people, and get things done. That is a large part of it. And there've been occasions, oh my word, there've been occasions where I've had to really kind of almost be in several separate conversations at once just to kind of smooth things around a bit, so that we all actually pull in the direction of the good thing we're trying to do and don't fall over the kind of little niggles and things we have with the way it's being done. That has been a thing, because obviously everyone has different opinions on how things should be done, and sometimes those don't always line up. So there's been a certain amount of just getting people on board with, we're trying to do this, will you all actually behave and come with us, rather than just try and make your points, which is all very well and good, but doesn't actually help things. So there's been a bit of that, not so much over recent years, but yeah, different personalities come and go. So yeah, it's that kind of, and I suppose, yeah, it's that having that idea of, we're trying to do some good stuff here, having that kind of vision of where we'd like to be, and just getting people on board with, that's where we want to go. We'll have the discussion, and then we'll kind of all gradually get something we can agree on that is then what we're doing. So without which we'll just go in a circle. So I think a lot of it is, yeah, it's classic people skills, people management type stuff that you do. And yeah, some of that I had, some of it I've had to learn. It's been quite useful in many ways. It's those kind of things that I think I've also learned a hell of a lot about how to run a charity, which I haven't had to use, but in order to do the name change stuff, I had to go and find out all about charities and non-profit organisations and a lot of legal article stuff that is in there somewhere now. And yeah, no, yes, yeah, and then there've been odd things that I just never expected I'd have to do. I never expected to be having to draft the response to the death of the Queen. That's one of those things that just turned up. I was driving home. I knew it was imminent, driving home, and the next thing it said, well, actually, you need to respond to this. Really? Okay, here we go. So yeah, there are little things which you just have to do because you're that person at the top, and it's expected of you. So it's that kind of, I guess, that sort of dutiful part of it, which perhaps hasn't been a thing before.
Oh, cool. Thanks for that. And from your perspective, Malcolm, has there been an area where you think you've developed the most, or there's been an area where you were surprised that you found you needed to develop?
Yeah, I guess there's, you end up, as Ian's just said, writing things. So I think, I'd say perhaps always thought I can write a decent technical report, but then writing things for e-preview every time you write your president's message, and you're trying to make that as interesting as possible without it being too formal and things like that. And then there are, getting up on your hind legs and talking to 200 people at ASEC, which can be a little bit daunting. But I think, maybe I haven't improved, but it's something, I've got one more chance. So it'll be those sorts of things. Yeah, I think I have learned a bit and things like that, which hopefully I can use going forward. Some of it's given me some good ideas about what I might want to do post presidency and things like that. It's probably still in IFC, hopefully, when we get there. So yeah, I think those sorts of skills, I guess, chairing meeting skills and things like that. Not all, it's a bit like herding cats sometimes, people, we never stick to the timescales on the agenda, but then cutting in and trying to politely curtail conversation. So those sorts of skills you will learn, so we can get the business of the day done. So perhaps that's one of the ones where I thought perhaps I had better skills than I actually did, and hopefully I'm getting better.
Great, thanks. I'm sure we're all the same in that area. I'm sure we're all the same. Andrew, so many people, including myself, regard the position as president having a certain amount of gravitas, and I just wondered whether or not you felt that when you were elected, and whether or not it's changed your outlook in any way.
I think there definitely is. Yeah, there is an amount of gravitas. You do get a wide and varied response to becoming president-elect. You get some people who are very supportive. You'll get the odd person who will forever give you a bit of banter about it. Thank you, James. But I think not just within the organisation, because obviously within INCOSE UK, people acknowledge what that role is and what that role does. You get a lot more people coming to you for especially around ASEC and around some of the UCAV stuff. A lot more people are addressing issues to you that you then have to go and resolve. But wider than that, I think I've seen a difference elsewhere across my day job, for example. That ability to stand in front of a room and say, yes, I am this role within Towers. I am also the president-elect of INCOSE UK. Does bring a certain weight when people say, well, why, what do you have as a level of authority in this, or why should we be listening to you? There is definitely a weight that this role brings to that, because you've been recognised as a person who's a leader in systems engineering across the UK. And I've certainly seen a difference in the way that I interact with some of my colleagues and the amount of responsibility that I've been given, not just obviously the responsibility of this role, but the responsibility of my day job has increased. And I think that's in part because of landing this role.
Yeah, excellent. Of course, one of the really interesting things about the transition through the three roles is the fact that we've got such a span here that when Ian was president-elect, and I think Ivan was past president, and Kirsty was president, which seems a very long time ago now. And I guess at some point in the future, Andrew's going to be immediate past president, and we've got no idea who the president-elect will be at that stage. That seems so far in the future. I guess with that in mind, and this question is going to be to Ian, when Andrew gets to be immediate past presidents, what are you hoping that the new incoming president-elect is going to bring to that role? How do you hope that we've advanced and changed throughout that long period?
Okay, so a few things. I would imagine we'll have our fellow scheme fully up and running, first set of fellows through committee formed, and that will start to be a kind of well-oiled machine going on. We could potentially be at double the numbers of people, so up at 3,000 or so. It would be nice to have a wider, more diverse set of industries involved. So I think potentially Andrew's president, the PE, when Andrew's shuffling off to the left, maybe from a completely different industry that isn't one of the traditional defence and aerospace type ones or rail. It could be somebody from something quite different, and that would be nice. I would like to see that our actual range of leadership positions has spanned and broadened so that we don't just rely on directors the whole time, but they will have assistants and little teams underneath them, because that really is the way to do this, is to have a bigger team that supports each function rather than having one person trying to carry it all themselves. And so obviously we have made efforts to do that with the ECF shadowing, that sort of thing. But I think the next step is the NAC playing a role in trying to promote the idea of assistants and associates that can come in and help with things. So it should be probably a bigger team doing more stuff. I would really like to see us also be more plugged in with the Royal Academy and what it does. So potentially looking forward 4 years, we might actually have policy people whose role it is to actually engage with policy the same way that IMEC, IT and so on do. Not perhaps paid staff positions, but somebody whose role it is to really engage with what policies are going through in the kind of bigger parts of the ecosystem, and where are we going to go and play. And of course, a thing that already has happened is we have been invited to more parties since we became a PEI. Most notably the work with the IPA, where myself and Malcolm were drafted in to help write the systems integration guidance. Those sorts of things, they're coming, and we can now see them. And whereas we used to kind of catch the coattails on the way past, we're now seeing the headlights coming towards us, which is a far nicer place to be. So I think potentially, yeah, you've got somebody playing on a wider stage, perhaps not from a traditional industry, with a bigger team around them that's just there, with more people that have been around a little bit longer in various positions, and it's just more of a kind of self-propagating machine almost. Yeah. That's what I'd like.
Cool. And something you alluded to earlier, Malcolm, is that you mentioned the fact that you were more advanced in your career when you took on the role than, say, Andrew is now. Not for a moment suggesting that either of those positions is better, but what do you see as being the strengths and the weaknesses of somebody earlier in their career taking on the role as perhaps somebody further on in their career?
That's a difficult one. I guess, the first thing is, experience of leading teams and things like that, but that shouldn't be a blocker to anybody thinking of volunteering and putting themselves forward for this role, because it is a good learning position as well. I think one of the disadvantages of being perhaps where I was is you may have more set views, but I'm pretty open anyway, and look to what other people can suggest, and I'm not set in my ways or anything like that. But it is, I don't think there should be or any disadvantage of someone earlier in their career. It's probably an advantage in many ways, because they might have more energy and things like that. But it's, I don't think anyone should sort of look and say, I'm too early in my career to do it. I think they should say, what do they want to do and what can they give to the role? Because we've all got our own strengths and weaknesses that we can bring. And don't look at all of the perhaps the more recent past presidents. There's been quite a range where people are in their career. Some people have used it as a stepping stone in their their work careers, saying this is good not just for me but for INCOSE UK, because I can give something to here and I will learn and improve as an individual. So there's always that. So it's, don't ever think that you're not suitable. Go for it. If you want to do it, go for it. And I think the more inclusive we are across all sorts of criteria, then the better, because we need those different points of view, to grow and to become, what we want to be. So that's what I'd say. Don't think just because you're only that far into your career that you shouldn't be part of running the institute that which you're a member of.
Cool. So we're just coming to the end now. So I've just got one question each for you, which if we could keep it brief, please, because obviously we're running out of time. So the first question goes to Ian. Ian, what do you think has been INCOSE UK's biggest achievement, either under your stewardship or prior, or in fact under Malcolm's stewardship as well?
I think this journey to becoming a properly regulated PEI, and the fact that's then given us the springboard to do the name change and really kind of change ourselves, that new identity thing, really. But it's all coming from the PEI thing.
Yeah, cool, excellent. And then for you, Malcolm, what do you think is INCOSE UK's biggest current challenge?
I think it's primarily getting a good financial model. Ian's alluded to it before. Our relationship with INCOSE, the fact that we're a PEI, to allow us to grow and do the stuff that we really need to do, we need a good financial basis on which to do it. So I think that's our biggest challenge at the moment.
Great, thanks. And then the last question goes to Andrew, and this is looking forward. What do you think our biggest opportunity is?
I think we're coming up to 30 years of INCOSE in the UK. We're about to build on the PEI status, and as Ian said, becoming the Institute for Systems Engineering. I think the biggest opportunity is to use that brand to really make a statement on how systems engineering is performed across the UK. Actually make a name for ourselves with some of the bodies, the authority bodies, the Royal Academy, the Engineering Council, and actually stamp our name. I think also with the change to IFC, it gives us the ability to really make a statement that we are a thing in our own right. We're not just a chapter of INCOSE worldwide. We are a body in our own right that delivers our own benefits to our members, and really build on what those member benefits are in terms of professional recognition, not just necessarily for individuals, but looking forward to academic course recognition and things like that as well, and use this as a springboard to get that seat at that table.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for your time this afternoon. I would just remind everybody watching that INCOSE does rely on volunteers, and we're always needing more people to volunteer and get involved. And so if you're interested in any position in INCOSE, not just the position of president, then you can speak to INCOSE directly. You can speak to any of the 3 Ps or even myself, and we'll discuss those things, those opportunities with you. So just once again, thank you for your time, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, James. Thank you to everyone
Thank you, James.
who joined us today.